Good evening, everybody, and welcome, welcome. If this is your first time at a Somerville Museum event, I want to offer you a special welcome. We're so happy you're with us tonight. So the Somerville Museum was founded in 1897 as the Somerville Historical Society, and the museum's building on Central Street was constructed in the 1920s. The mission of the museum is to be the city's mirror, so to reflect its past and its present and hopefully shape the future of the city of Somerville. If you are watching through the Somerville Media Center or Somerville City Cable, welcome to you as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Tonight's event is Voices from Somerville's Nepali community, and we have a wonderful panel for you. This event is part of a Somerville Museum Zoom series called Voices from Somerville, Culture, Community, and History. It's made possible in part by Mass Humanities, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we thank them for their support. I would also like to thank Erlene Tenise, Ada Maria Santos, Adriana Fernandez, and Jenny Sansorin for their support and help in producing this series. With us tonight is the Somerville Museum's Assistant Director, Allison Drasner, and we're so happy she's here as well. So tonight we're going to hear from 4 members of the local Nepali community talk about their work, share their stories, and their experiences in Somerville's neighborhoods. And next, we'll listen to a historian from Somerville discuss connections between Nepal and the United States. And following that, we're going to have some time for questions. So I'd like to introduce our panel, and then we'll get started. Imagine, who is also known as Sneha Shrestha, is an artist who incorporates her native language, the aesthetics of Sanskrit scriptures, along with graffiti influences to create paintings and larger-than-life murals. Imagine's work has been exhibited at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and one of her most recent works is a 30-foot sculpture that is currently on view at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. She received her graduate degree from Harvard University, and her work is held in private collections at Facebook, Google, and Fidelity Investments. As an educator and social entrepreneur, she founded Nepal's first children's art museum in Kathmandu. She passionately supports Asian art by working as the arts program manager at the South Asia Institute at Harvard University. In addition to these many achievements, Imagine has generously taken the time to contribute to her own community's museum, the Somerville Museum, by creating beautiful title art for one of the museum's recent exhibits, and we're so grateful for that. Rukmini Karki is a senior advocate at the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence and the immediate past president of the Nepali Women's Global Network. Inspired by her mother, she is committed to empowering women, ending domestic violence, and uplifting people from vulnerable communities. While in Nepal, Rukmini worked at Plan International, where she engaged more than 100 civil society organizations to promote gender awareness and empower women. Rukmini speaks 5 languages and holds 2 master's degrees, one from Tribhuvan University in Nepal and the other from Brandeis University. Our next speaker will be Parashu Phuyal, who is an attorney who helps Nepali residents across the city access resources. He's a community engagement specialist and Nepali liaison at the City of Somerville's Office of Immigrant Affairs, and he works with residents across the city. Parashuram also worked as an attorney and advocate in Nepal and holds a master's in law from Northeastern University. And the final speaker on our panel tonight will be Rabina Lockett, who is co-owner and chef at Himalayan Kitchen restaurant in Union Square. Rabina purchased the business 6 years ago with her brother, and she also works alongside her husband. Her passion is cooking, and she creates authentic Nepali cuisine and also enjoys experimenting with new dishes. And full disclosure, I must admit that I am a restaurant customer. Tonight, we will also be hearing from history professor, legal scholar, and Somerville resident Dan Breen from Brandeis University. Dan also attended Tribhuvan University in Nepal. Dan is the winner of Brandeis University's 2017 Louis Dembitz Brandeis Prize for Excellence in Teaching. So thank you so much again to everybody for being with us tonight. If you have questions and don't want to hold them, you can put them in the chat and we'll be sure to ask them later. So let's start tonight with our first panelist, Imagine. Welcome, Imagine.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me today. Hello, everyone, and namaste. I just want to start off with thanking everyone who's here today and also thanking the Somerville Museum for involving me in this. I'm super excited to get started. So as Sharon said, my name is Sneha Shrestha. In the art world, I'm known as Imagine. Today, I want to share some of my work and some of my inspiration behind them, which is very deeply rooted in my Nepali heritage, and I'm very proud of it. And any chance I get to share it, I do. So I will be sharing my screen and then beginning the presentation. Okay. So my start in painting large murals kind of came from learning about graffiti culture. When I first moved to Boston, my supervisor at that time, he is one of the pioneers of graffiti in Boston. And so getting to work with him, I was really inspired to kind of do my own as well. And so graffiti, because I didn't grow up around, so I was born and raised in Nepal, and I came here for college. So having spent most of my life in Nepal, I didn't really grow up around graffiti. So when I was introduced to graffiti, I was reading it and I was learning about it like a new art form, because that's what it was to me. So I was reading books, I was talking to people, I was trying to learn about the history of it as much as possible. And I learned that graffiti is an art form based solely on letters, right? Like you stylize letters to show off your personality, and that's the art form. It's not necessarily portraits, it's not necessarily anything else. The art itself is the letters, and I love that about it. And so over time, I learned how to spray paint, and I started doing pieces that look very sort of typical graffiti pieces. However, over time, I realized that my work looked similar to, you know, most graffiti pieces, but I felt like my voice was kind of getting lost in it. I started thinking to myself, you know, what is my connection to this art form other than, you know, being obsessed with it or loving it or having so much respect for it? Where is my voice in it? And so I started thinking, you know, well, I learned how to write in Nepali before I learned how to write in English. What would happen if I wrote in Nepali? And so from there was no turning back. I sort of started experimenting different ways of writing Nepali on my murals, and started experimenting heavily with it, with the art form. I felt like it was an art, it was a way to express myself that felt very authentic, because you know, I'm not the first Nepali national to say this, you know, or being asked most times is, oh, do, you know, your English is so great. Do all Nepali people speak like you? Or do all Nepali people look like you? Do all Nepali people like spicy food? Like things like this that attempt to categorize a nation that is so diverse into one box. I always found it hard to grasp my identity and then share it with the world. And so when I figured this out in my art form, I could confidently say that, yes, this is Nepali and this is my version of how I write Nepali in my artwork. So the authenticity that I found it empowering for myself too, to be able to express myself. So I want to start off with this mural that's in Central Square. It's an MIT building, and it's probably the most seen mural, I guess, of mine that I've done to date. It's a 6 or 7 story MIT building, and it's you know, smack in the middle of Central Square, and I'm very proud of this one. And so when I did this one, a lot of, there was a lot of visibility with it and a lot of questions that came with it. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this. Usually in my murals, what I write is various mantras that I grew up with, or like sayings that my parents would tell me to, make me behave, or like, just sort of phrases of like wisdom that your parents would say. And when I paint them over and over again in Nepali. And so, but on this one, I wrote a quote from a really famous poet named Lakshmi Prasad Devkota. And basically the translation for that, and he talks about, how diversity in the country really makes us stronger and not the opposite, and talks about success in various ways. And so I picked a quote here that basically talked about how success comes from who you are inside and not necessarily where you come from. So the idea of meritocracy. So what he says is, success and you being a big person isn't dictated by your caste, right? Like caste system is like still very real in Nepal, and it's still relevant. And this idea of meritocracy really sort of inspired this piece, because it's in Central Square and it's at the confluence of like, big tech businesses. That way, if you go up the street and there's a lot of small mom and pop stores, and then there's like an immigrant community at the port neighborhood. So, who is to say what success means? And I think a lot of times we struggle with what is kind of put on us as being successful. You need to be certain, I don't know, you need to be a doctor, an engineer, or whatever to be successful, right? But then at the end of the day, the truth is that you define your own success. And so I was at that point in my career at that time where I was questioning that myself. And that's how the piece was kind of born. I figured it'd be relevant for people around that neighborhood as well. And then from then on, the next murals that I did, that was sponsored also by the Somerville Arts Council, kind of revolved around that as well. So I get asked about colors in my piece, and so I can only show photographs. Photographs are so much better than kind of trying to explain where the colors come from. These are flowers that are very prevalent during, so these are photos that I took. The left one is a photo that I took on my way back from the airport, flying into Kathmandu for the first time after spending 2 years abroad in college in the US. And then I saw this scene, and this woman sitting there, her sari is matching like the flower garlands there. It's festival season. And I just had to pause and look at it and just have this new appreciation of, what I was missing, which was these like colors of home and just like mundane scenery that I wouldn't otherwise see here. And the right side was this little brass pot that my mom had decorated at my house to sort of like welcome me into the house after such a long time. And so these are the colors that kind of inspire my mural. And here's a closer look at the same mural that I just showed you, just to show you scale. You can see a really tiny gentleman on the bottom right over there. Yeah, so over time, when I started writing in Nepali more and more, I got very curious about, the writing form itself, in terms of, why, we have Chinese calligraphy, we have Japanese calligraphy, we have Arabic calligraphy, all these sort of older languages have this respect for the aesthetics of the language. And I thought, well, Nepali comes from Sanskrit and the Devanagari script, which started back in the 7th century. How come we don't have something that kind of respects that and brings it to the forefront in front of everybody right now, because it's such a beautiful language? And so I started doing research, and here's a 14th century manuscript. This is actually from Nepal. It's a Buddhist manuscript. And so I started looking at the writings on it, and seeing how, each line is kind of separated, how the size kind of varies, how there's margins on the sides. I really spend hours kind of analyzing how that person must have written it. And that's how I get my inspiration. And so this is one of the paintings that I created that's directly inspired by the manuscripts that I spend time with. It literally gives me goosebumps looking at manuscripts, thinking that, uh, my ancestors were writing this way before we even came into existence. And to even be close to something like that, it makes me feel very close to my culture in a very deep way. And so I also take inspiration from architectures of temples. This is a famous stupa. It's called Swayambhu Stupa in Kathmandu, and it's one of my favorite places to go. And every time I go, I notice different things about it. And so this time I noticed this sort of like arch at the entrance once you go up like 1,000 steps, and you get welcomed by these like arches. There's something about things that look metallic and golden-ish. These are brass, but it's shined to a point where it almost looks golden. And it made me think about things that, when something's golden and it's an architectural shape, it has a presence to it that kind of demands respect. And it kind of happens all over the world. But then this was sort of the first time I started noticing it. The temple tops in Nepal also have that. And so I wanted to recreate something of my own version. These are two really huge what do you call them? Shipping containers that were installed outside the Boston City Hall. And I painted on it and kind of made like this metallic sort of look. But it was also a way of saying to the city that like I'm here, right? Like it's City Hall, it's an important building, and here I'm creating something of my own right in front of City Hall. And so that was a really exciting project to do. And here are a couple of more pieces that are inspired by sort of the metallic gold. And then so over time, I've kind of loved creating artwork that's larger than me, because there's just something fascinating about building something from scratch. And here you see me paint one of my newer murals. Actually, I'm not painting here yet. I'm just thinking about how in the world I'm going to finish painting this, because it was a 50 feet high building, and we just finished sketching it. And I was just looking up, wondering, and my friend just happened to capture the photo at that time. So this is in East Boston. So you see a tiny me on the bottom left over there. It's probably the largest mural I've painted. It's in East Boston. You can see it across from the ICA. And I really wanted to paint mandalas, and I wanted to put 3 mandalas because 3 is a sacred number. When growing up, we do everything 3 times. Whenever there are various ceremonies, you kind of do it 3 times. And circle is also, like mandalas are also such a universal sort of symbol and a sign that people can relate to, that I really wanted to include that. Actually, mandala, the word comes from the Sanskrit word mandal, which means circle. And so a lot of times the mandala itself means circle. So if someone is saying like a circular mandala to you, it's kind of redundant. So over time, so when COVID happened, right, it kind of changed. Sharon, can you tell me how much time I have? I feel like I'm going on.
I think you have about 5 more minutes. Is that okay?
Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so when COVID hit, it kind of changed all our lives all of a sudden. And so as an artist who spent her time kind of painting every day and painting walls and painting sort of mindful mantras on walls, I was kind of stuck home, and I really didn't know what to paint. I didn't paint for a whole month, which was a long time for me to go without painting. And then when I did start to paint, no words kind of came to my mind. No positive messages came to my mind, because it felt like such a bleak period. But I also knew that I started painting because it was an outlet for me as a child. I've painted ever since I can remember. And so at during that difficult time where I couldn't fly back home and I still am not home, and just trying to figure out what is happening in the world, I kind of turned to painting to gather myself, to remind myself of constants in my life. And painting is one of them. And so because I couldn't paint any words at that time because my mind was so sort of jumbled up, I decided to focus on just one letter. So this is a repetition of the first letter of the Nepali alphabet. And so I stylized it in a way where I'm writing it with a calligraphy brush. But in this painting and in the whole series, I try to write it over and over again without drawing straight lines. So the reason why they're in a straight formation here is because each of them are almost the same exact replica of each one. And so it kind of helps me meditate when I focus just on the letters, because the amount of pressure that you put on the brush, it really depends on how you're breathing too. So your breathing gets regulated as you're trying to paint the same letters over and over again. So over COVID, the painting really, painting this style really helped me kind of cope with what was happening. And so when I was coming up with that, the Gardner Museum got in touch with me and invited me to create something at that time. And so I thought, what an interesting time to create a very important piece of work. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And so I started looking at the website and the collection of the Gardner Museum. And I came across this statue, which is, I think, 17th century Buddha statue from China. And so this was the only one piece of artifact that I felt really close to in the museum, because it resembled most closest to my culture. And so, the brass, like going back to the brass and the gold shine, the metallic sort of look of something that really kind of drew me closer. And I said, okay, I've got a hook here. Let's see what else I can find. And then I found this Simone Martini piece, which is a multi-paneled church altar piece, and it's from Italy. So really far away from where I'm from. But it still called me. There was something in it that made me feel really familiar. And I started digging deeper. Is it the gold? Is it the formation of it? What is it? And so I realized that it is the gold of it, but then also these arches that are round. And so this is a photo of a Nepali temple, and we have arches too. And it made me think about, these golden arches. How do we, all these different cultures have it. How do we decide who gets to be under the golden arches? I started kind of digging into it. And so here, I wasn't too familiar with the images under the golden arches. And then here, I grew up around it, so I never really questioned it. And so here I was in a place where I was like, well, who gets to be under these golden arches? Shouldn't it be just everybody? And shouldn't we just have respect for, everybody deserves to be in that space. And so I wanted to create something closer to that. And so here is the 30-foot long sculpture that I created for the Gardner Museum. As you can see, the arches kind of are there, and then sort of the golden sheen, and then the repetition of the first letter of the Nepali alphabet. And so I am drawn to the first letter because it kind of resembles beginnings. If you think about it, even in English, when we first start to write, you learn how to write the letter A first. And in Nepali, it's the same thing. You learn how to write this letter ka first. And so it symbolizes beginnings in a lot of ways. And so here's another view of it. Yeah, I was really excited to install this. It's my first 3D sort of work. And then right now I'm in New Jersey. I just finished my newest mural, and it's directly inspired by this piece here. And so this is the first time I'm kind of sharing it at a talk. So bear with me if I'm not too articulate with it. But just, I wanted to reflect on just the journey that people make. Jersey is supposed to be one of the most diverse cities in the US. And so I wanted to kind of reflect on the journey that people took to be there. Everything from the hardships of immigration to, reaching for these like doors of opportunities, these golden arches that people want to kind of go through. And so in this, I wrote the orange part says DS 154. It's the name of the form that people need to fill out. Everybody entering the US needs to fill out the first time they come in. And so that's kind of your introduction to this alien language that you're kind of faced with, where you don't understand the forms, everything's in numbers, and your identity is kind of given a number. And so I was reflecting on how everybody might have gone through a similar experience filling out these forms. And these golden sort of doors of opportunities can either just seem like golden doors, or they can actually be sort of like these amazing places for opportunities for people. So this was what I was reflecting on. And I think the journey continues with my work, kind of thinking about personal experiences and trying to bring my culture and my people with me the most authentic way I know how. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to me for the past 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hope you read through the chat with all of the comments about your beautiful work, Imagine. And
Thank you.
next, we're going to hear from Rukmini Karki.
So, hello, good evening, and namaste to everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. I would like to send my special thanks to the Somerville Museum for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'm here to talk about myself, my work, and my involvement and my role in the Nepali community, Greater Boston, especially in Somerville. So, first, let me start who I am. So I have some pictures, some literature, so that I would like to share my screen with you. So topics for today's I would like to cover about myself, my work at Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence, and my involvement. I already shared this. So who am I? Me and my husband came to United States in 2005 as an immigrant when I received a full scholarship to Brandeis for a master's degree in sustainable international development. At that time, I was very new to this country and I landed to Somerville and I stayed to Somerville until 2010. So I received a master's degree from Brandeis. Then I was looking for a job, and at the same time, before my graduation, I gave birth to a daughter, beautiful daughter, I would say. I also had a previous master's in sociology and anthropology from Tribhuvan University, Nepal, with a bachelor degree in family law from India. Moving to my work experience, I worked in Nepal for 10 years in the community development with international organization. And basically the work that I did was the poverty alleviation, empowering human rights, and working with the Nepalese community in the most underprivileged countrysides. So while I was looking for a job in 2010, I started working at the Women's Resource Center in Scranton, Pennsylvania. That was my first job in United States, and I was so excited to have that. And since then, when everything I got all the green cards and all the citizenship, everything, then I decided to come back to Boston. And again, then I applied a job and I worked for the Asian Task Force. And now I'm here at the Asian Task Force for the last 11 years as a senior advocate. So what is Asian Task Force? Actually, like a Asian Task Force Asian Task Force works in the Boston area. We also work for Lowell community and the Worcester. And currently there are around 15 advocates, and we total are 35 to 40. We have a shelter, and also our staff talks more than 20 languages, and our mission is to eliminate the domestic violence in Massachusetts and across. So if any of you who like to connect with Asian Task Force, here is our information, the hotline. We work 24 hours and the services that we provide, and you can visit our website also. So beside as an advocate at ATAX, I was also nominated as the president of Nepali Women Global Network in 2013. At the time, I was in Somerville, Glen Street. I still remember the place. So I was the president for 6 years. During the time as serving as the president, I really got the opportunity to deepen my relationship with the Nepali community in the greater Boston area. And at that time, what I remember, there were 30 Nepalese people in the 30,000 Nepalese people in the greater Boston area. And as a president, I had more opportunity to widen my skills, knowledge, to share with them, to sit with them. And the platform was a great place for me to start the work. And that was a volunteer work, what I did with the community and especially in the Somerville. I would like to share some pictures that are so meaningful for us. The Nepali Women Global Network, which was established in 2002, I remember. And beside me, there were 3-4 presidents already. So in Somerville, we as a team decided to make a uniform for our community, for the Nepali Women Global Network, a blue shari and a red blouse for that. So that in every event, we come with our uniform so that the audience knows, oh, this is the member or volunteer or whatever we do. And that was the unique uniform for us. And on my right hand side, I would say that in 2013, this was a picture of 2016, but it was the first time in Greater Boston area, the Nepali Women Global Network organized the International Women's Day for the Nepali community, and it was amazing. 300 people came. And since it was a free event, we always, to our mission, we want to carry the mission. The Nepali Women Global Network's main mission is advocacy. So we invited all men, women community of all colors, and there were more than 300 people to join the International Women's Day. And I would say probably that was a very grand success. So next, moving to that, we all know that in 2015, there was an earthquake which devastated our country, Nepal. And at the time, I had the opportunity, and my team, whole Nepali community, had the opportunity to talk to the mayor of Somerville, and Nepali Women Global Network took a lead going to the city of Somerville and asking the mayor, when my country is devastated and 20,000 people living in Somerville and surrounding areas, what would you do as a mayor? So he said, come on, let's organize something. Then we plan for the candlelight visit, not only in the city of Somerville, but in many different areas. But this was where many thousands of people came, and the Nepali Women Global Network was also able to raise more than 30,000 at the time, not only in Greater Boston, but within all the states of America, like all the friends did in the college, universities, they send the check to us. And the money, whatever we got, we sent to Nepal. And those money at the time, there were so many organizations helping Nepal during that time, but Nepali Women Global Network focused on the girls and the women, especially who were in a very dire situation of the sanitary napkins. Girls couldn't go when there was earthquake, they couldn't go outside. And we helped to construct the temporary toilets for them. And also the Nepali Women Global Network helped to provide the uniform or the piece of clothes to them for the girls and the women, especially through Nepali Women Global Network Nepal chapter. And this was done in April onwards, like a 2015. We did many activities, but today, because of the time, I'm only focusing to the main event that we did. So I would like to move to the next. It was such a wonderful time during that. Somerville City Hall staffs helped us, and in the 19 Union Square, we did a yard sale. And to be very honest, we never had an idea of doing the yard sale, but we learned from our community, and we had so many stuffs at home, like you donate or you throw them away. But during that time, an idea came. The used clothes, they were just not only used, but they were brand new clothes also. We sell them $1, $2, $3, whatever amount. And it was a one day at the 19 Union Square, and the next day at the Davis Square. We were able to collect $2,000 just for 6 or 7 hours, and it was amazing. And you can see at the right hand side the Nepali sisters with the t-shirt. We created the t-shirt in the Union Square, and that was like a Nepali Women Global Network. And you can see all the stuffs, and there were many males. I didn't put the all pictures. They're behind us. They were supporting us. Not and also I was appointed at the commission of the Somerville City Hall. During that time, we were very closely with the mayor of Somerville, and because my expertise was in the domestic violence and also the gender equality and many other social issues. So with the Somerville City Hall's Women Commission, we started planning and how we can create and how we can keep our city a domestic violence zone, like a violence-free zone. So during that time, like I think from 2014, I involved up to 2016. Then I moved to uh, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and after that I moved to Medford. Then I was no more the Women Commission, but we still we still go to Somerville and look for the program and participate that. And those days, the candlelight vigil was a great, like, walking from the police station and going across to the city halls. I remember this, why I put this, because of the COVID, we could not do many events. And I would like to read out a few of these. During that time, we did the dental screening, the mental health, and the women empowerment series of talks. And in our community, like a mental health, like when you come to this new country, you are not aware of many things and cultural shock, and you don't know where to go. Education alone cannot help you, and you are shocked for some time. And that is why, like even now, like uh, there are single mothers, there are single fathers raising the kids, and with the overwhelming situation, finding a job and the financial situations and finding your proper place to stay here. So at the time, like what we thought, the mental health, like which in my community consider like a mental problem. It's still like a not that you are depressed. If you have a physical pain, you could easily take ibuprofen or a Tylenol, or you can get cured. But mental health is, you don't know what is going on with you. So we wanted to create in our community. You need to share with people like what you're going through. You need to talk with people. You need to talk with a doctor, and it's not same, or it's you're not bringing anything in the your family, not a image, just going and getting checked what is going with you. And it's a stress release, like what I learned, like people go for a long walk when you are stressed. So these are the things, giving information in the community, like how can you be healthy and free from the mental. It's not the mental illness, it's just you are going through some anxiety. Those were the things like we did. And during like a, and also I would like to say very proudly that as a president of the Nepali Women Global Network in the past, I had such an opportunity in the greater Boston area to work with the local organization, helping the Nepali community with the immigration, helping the Nepali community filling out the citizenship form, helping the Nepali community how the children can get better education, helping the Nepali community like empowering women's and like talking about driving and building the capacity. Everybody in this world has come with full potential, but they got lost in this new country. So you need to build all this thing, thinking quietly and sharing with your friends. There are so many resources in your local city hall, but none of you have the guts to go and ask. That is where Nepali Women Global Network stand up and show them you can go in each library where you can take the English classes free. Your children can go and you can take many things they know, but what you call hesitant. So that is why our job as a Nepali Women Global Network past president was creating awareness in the community and building a stronger network for the Nepali people residing in the greater Boston areas, and also working with many other institutions for their personal benefits. And the picture that I am showing here was the last event that I attended in Somerville 2019 before the pandemic. That was the Nepal festival. And after that, we all are indoors. And I would like in the left, in my right side, there is a book crowning written by a professor, Gita Phuyal. She's a professor in Connecticut. And this book reading we did in, I think it was 191 Armory Building, and like a talking about this book, and it gives you a whole cultures of the Nepali women in Nepal, and still the situations they're going through and carrying that and coming through all the challenges. And at the last, I really love to say this quote, and thank you so much for listening. And if you have anything, and if I have not touched, if there are queries, I would be happy to answer to all your questions. I'm just looking at the focusing on the time. Thank you for listening to me and giving this opportunity. And I would say from the bottom of my heart to all the people in this universe very strongly, if you are going to see real development in the world, then our best investment is women and women's education and girls' education. And thank you so much, and namaste.
Rukmini, thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you do in the Boston area with the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence. Thank you for being here. Next, we're going to hear from Parashu Phuyal, a community engagement specialist with the City of Somerville.
Namaste, good evening all. Subha Sandhya. Today I'm talking about a little bit about me, a little bit about Nepal, because this program is organized by Somerville Museum, so it's related to a little bit about history also. So I'm talking about a little bit about Nepali history and introduction of Nepal, and then I'm talking about my job, my work, and then I'm talking about relation between Nepali community and Somerville city. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I was born in Nepal and grew up in Nepal. I did master in law in Nepal, and I practiced as a lawyer and attorney for more than 8 years. And I moved to Boston with my family in 2009. And Somerville City was our first destination. We lived Somerville. And then I did master in law from Northeastern University. And currently I'm working in Somerville City as a community engagement specialist in Office of Immigrant Affairs Office. And then I'm working with Nepali organizations also. I'm working with Nepali class Boston as a volunteer teacher. We teach Nepali language culture, and tradition to our new generation. We already have in our backup about our culture and our language, but kids who grow up here, we want to pass our idea, our culture, our tradition to them. So every Sunday we teach them Nepali. And I'm also vice president of Nepal, Greater Boston Nepali Community, which is the oldest organization in this area. It is established in 1989. And I'm working as a spokesperson of Pashupati Buddha Foundation of New England. Uh, Now I'm going to talk about a little bit about Nepal. Nepal is, I want to share my screen first, then I'll talk about Nepal. Nepal is a beautiful country of South Asia. It is surrounded by two large countries, large by population, large by land, India and China. Northern border of Nepal is with China, and three parts of the country, east, south, and west. It is with India. Nepal is landlocked country. You can say linked also. And Nepal is a country which is never colonized, and there is no Independence Day in Nepal. And its flag is totally different than other countries' flag. Is You can see here in this picture, this is different type of flag. And Nepal has most diverse community because more than 125 languages are spoken in Nepal, and more than 123 ethnic groups they live in Nepal. But we have same tradition. Our official language is Nepali, and Nepal is known as the country of Mount Everest, which is highest peak of the world, and birthplace of Lord Buddha also. And Nepal has different type of festivals. Among them, Dasai, which is celebrates for 15 days, and Tihar celebrates 5 days. And we have more other festivals by different parts of country, by ethnic group, by language. We have many festivals. Nepal's history, if you go ancient history of Nepal, we can have actual date and date how old is Nepal. If you go Nepal Hindu holy books like Veds, you can find Nepal in these books also. Assume that these Veds are older than 5,000 years or 7,000 years, not exact date there. And authentic history of Nepal started from 462 AD. We have inscription found on that time, and our modern history, Nepal's modern history, started from 1769 when King Prithvinaran Saha completed his unification process, and when he owned Kathmandu Valley and give the name of country Nepal. After long unification, Nepal became a great country. It's called Greater Nepal. But at the same time, there was Great Britain taking other countries, colonized other countries, and India also was the part of Great Britain, and Nepal and Great Britain fought there for 2 years, 1814 to 1816, and Nepal lost, which is called Anglo-Nepal War, and Nepal lost a lot of its land, and British lost a lot of their soldiers. And at last, they make a treaty in 1816, which is called Sugauli Sandhi, and Nepal's today's border, Nepal today's map come up at that time. Nepal has great foods. You can see here. I don't want to talk a lot about that because we have an expert here, Rabina, who has a Nepali restaurant also. So she is expert on that field. So I don't want to talk much more about that, I'm currently working on city of Somerville Office of Immigrant Affairs. So I'm working as a medium of communication between the city and our residents, our community. We try to understand their problem and address these problems of the immigrant community. We provide information about city services and facilities. We try to solve the problem of immigrant community with the help of various department of city. We make arrangements of cooperation between community organization, businesses, and the city. We play a supportive role in providing necessary services, assistance, and assistance to the Nepali community, and we are working for as a facilitator, like including language and other needs of the community. Uh, Immigrant community has a lot of barriers. First barrier is always language barriers, then socio-cultural barriers, economic condition, and basic needs. When people immigrate here, they have a lot of type of problem. So it's very hard to deal with all problem in one time. So from our office, we try to help them. We try to provide information about services, and we help them how they can resolve their problem. And Somerville city and Nepali community has a lot of relation, which is uh, because Nepali is the 5th largest language spoken in Somerville city, and most Nepali community organizations are established and operating based on Somerville city. Somerville city has always been positive and supportive role for the Nepali community. Service Somerville city in the first city in Massachusetts who officially recognized Nepali language. So I would like to thank Somerville city for that too. And among the other cities around here, Somerville city is the city where the most Nepali speaker owned business here. Yeah, and from our office, we provide every type of help for our community to resolve their problems. And we work for as a bridge between city and community. So if we provide Somerville city's resources to community, and we get the voice from the community and get it back to the city, and try to make a policy and make other sources to solve their community problems. You can contact us through Somerville website, which is Viva Office of Immigrant Affairs. We have Facebook page also, City of Somerville Nepali, and our office is in 42 Cross Street. And you can call if you have any matter with Somerville. And I would like to thank Museum of Somerville Museum. I would like to thank our all participants, and I would like to thank all listeners who are listening us. And I would like to add some words in Nepali here. हामी समरविल सिटीबाट समरविल सिटीमा बसोबास गर्ने सबै नेपालीहरूको लागि अथवा कम्युनिटीमा यदि यहाँहरूमा कुनै पनि समस्या छ, कुनै काम समरविल सिटीसँग कुनै काम गर्नुपर्ने छ, समरविल सिटीसँग सम्बन्धित कुनै विषय छ भने त्यसको लागि यहाँहरूलाई सहयोग आवश्यकता छ भने हामीसँग सम्पर्क गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ र हामीले गर्न सक्ने सम्मको सबै किसिमको सहयोग यहाँहरूलाई उपलब्ध गराउँछौँ। Thank you. Thank you for all. Good evening. Dhanyavad. Namaste.
Parashu, thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you do for the city. And I wanted to invite our last panelist, Rabina Lockett. I'd like to give an extra thank you to Rabina, because as a chef, this is the time that she would normally be working. So I'm sure it took her extra effort to be here. Rabina, thank you so much for joining us. Rabina, Rabina, I think you're still muted.
Okay, I'm here. Sorry. So, hello and namaste. So, I am Rabina Lockett. I am the owner and the head chef of this Nepalese fusion restaurant. We are located at 40 Bow Street in Somerville. And I would really appreciate me being providing me this opportunity to be a part of Voices from Somerville's Nepalese community. So let me share right now. Today I would like to share the story of me coming here as a student and how I ended up opening a restaurant. So let me give a little background of where I came from. So I came from culturally rich community of Nepal, Lalitpur, and I'm the youngest one in my family and the only daughter. So I had, like, unlike other places where still girls don't go to school, I do have that privilege to go to school and learn more. But even with the schooling equal opportunity with my brothers and me, I was like, after school works and everything, I was geared more towards helping my mom, cooking, cleaning, doing dishes, where my brothers will be just watching TVs, playing soccer. And so that's how, I slowly, this exposure to cooking become my passion. And by the age of 12, I was cooking for like family gatherings, festivals, and just getting lots of compliments about my food. That's when I really like cooking gave me the confidence. Okay, I can do something in cooking. So that was it as a kid, right? But so I went to school, I graduated from college, and after that, I was like a middle school teacher. But around that time, there was a hype about, like, everywhere, like about going abroad, whether it's for education, where it was for like a work or everything. So that was in me too. So I really want to go abroad. I want to see world, and I want to do something. So first I went to Japan, and before I came to US. So in 2008, I came here in United States. But then I was at Troy, Alabama, and a year later I moved to Somerville so that I can go to school at Northeastern. And after graduating from Northeastern, I was looking for a job so that I can do something on my something where what I studied for. But like more I was looking for work, right? I just felt like this is not me. This is not what I want to do. And like I know from kid I want to do something that represents me, that I'm fond of. I'm that like something that I have passion for. And working for some kind of company is not me. I know that. So just that was still in my head. And then one day, like me and my brother, I live with my brother. So one day you said, okay, it's so hot outside, we don't want to cook, like let's order something. But we still crave those authentic meal, right? Like where can we get it from? We start looking for it. And like there was not even one single restaurant that serves our food. And I was telling my brother, wow, we have such a big community of Nepalese people around here, but there is not even a single restaurant where I can really right now go and get some food. So that was what planted me a seed in my head. Okay, I want to open this Nepalese restaurant. So that was a thought with my brother, right? But now I need to bring this to my family back home. When I brought this up, they was like, wow, what are you saying? You spend so much money and so much time on your education, so you just want to open a restaurant? They never knew what I was doing, because back home, like, the social status and success is based on what your salary and what your title is. And opening the restaurant was the last thing they could ever think about. So but I was still sticking on my dream, my career, my passion. So I said, no, I just want to I have passion for cooking, and this is what I want to do. So I stayed with my brother, and he has been helping me throughout this whole process of finding a place to opening the place. And so we decided we want to open a restaurant. So even like when we decided, okay, this is what do I want to do, like finding a place wasn't easy in a Somerville. So we went from Davy Square, Porter Square, all around the place. and we couldn't find the place that we were looking for. And on top of that, just having graduated, I didn't have the money to even buy the place. So, and like I said, when there is a will, there is a way, right? I just like everything worked out after a long, like a wait of 3-4 months. We found the perfect place in Bow Street, where my restaurant is located right now. But then comes the funding. So we didn't have much savings. So we went to every bank to see if we could get a loan from it, not knowing what the loan is and how to get it. But fortunately, one of the bank lended us some money, and we opened this restaurant. So even after we had this restaurant, it was really a hard time for us because this restaurant whom we bought it from, it wasn't doing good. So to bring everything we have vision and to bring it into reality, it was really hard for us. So every day we do have a time limited because we were running out of money. We were maxing out our credit cards. We didn't know what to do because we were not even making enough money to have the lights on. So we were panicking at the same time, but just didn't know what to do next. So, and even at that time, we were running that restaurant as like a former restaurant, like Barbecue International, because we are going through this awning process and everything to the city. And it is a historical building. So there was every little details we have to get approval for. But still, that was not solving our problem. So one night, I remember to this day, like it was a storm emergency. And so we opened for the half day. We couldn't bring any customers, so went home. Like, we don't know what to do. Everybody was like, if me, my brother and my husband, we were playing on our cell phone, just going through social medias and things. And that's when we thought, okay, what about blasting our restaurant open? Let's open a Facebook and Instagram page and blast it out on social media. That was it. Like, we did that whole like 6 hours or 7 hours of creating a Facebook to blasting. Next day, we've got the result. We have so many people coming in. Firstly, it was mostly those Nepalese people coming in because community didn't even know what we were for there. So like all the Nepalese people, I couldn't believe it. Like, it was people from Connecticut, people from Worcester, people from Rhode Island, Cape Cod. I was like, we didn't have even that much of the big space. It was formerly like a little takeout place. We would have like people waiting in our lines for hours for them to try our food. So after, I think the people like from the community saw what's going on, they started pouring in too. And that's how we are where we are right now. And like through this restaurant, we just don't want customer just to be happy with our food. We want to do something more than just them being happy. We want to have this connection with people where they feel like, okay, Himalayan Kitchen is just not for food, but something we feel like a family where we can share stories, where we can come and talk. I have several customers who just comes and say hi, who just sit down for hours just to talk to them or to listen to us or have fun with us. Like, there is one kid who just loves our mango lassi, and every time you say, okay, I want to go to Himalayan Kitchen for drinks, that feeling that we got from the community is priceless. And this is what makes Himalayan Kitchen something unique, because people consider that place as part of their lives and as the part of the community. So we owe every people so much for putting us where we are right now. And we appreciate every customer who contributed us, right? The community, the Somerville community, the Cambridge, and everybody who came in. And so in return, we wanted to do something to the community too. So during this pandemic, what we did was, for 2 months, every Tuesday, we were providing a free lunch to anyone who are in need. So that's what we did. And several times we donated lunch boxes to the homeless community. Yeah. And this is the relation that my family, we want to give it to community. And that's truly what allow us and especially me, to fulfill my vision, my goals, and my dreams. I truly feel like if it is not this country, not this community, I would not be able to pursue my dreams and not be able to be where I am. I think that's it about my story. And I thank everyone for listening to my story and making us the part of the community. Thank you.
Rabina, thank you so much. What a story. And thank you personally, because as I mentioned, I'm a customer of your restaurant.
Thank you
And
so much.
thank you again for being here. Next, we're going to hear from Dan Breen about history connections between Nepal and the United States.
Hello, everybody. And I promise to make this relatively short for all of you. And while I share my screen, I just wanted to point out that we're very lucky in Somerville because 1% of people in Somerville have some Nepali ancestry. And that makes Somerville the home of the densest population of Nepali Americans in the United States for a city of this size. The largest bodies of Nepali Americans happen to be in New York and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, especially in Irving, Texas. But the Somerville population happens to be particularly dense, which is, I think, a great distinction from us. So I just wanted to say a few words about some connections between Nepal and the United States. Here is the map of Nepal as it is today. But as you heard earlier, Nepal used to be a much bigger place. So here is the extent of the Nepali kingdom as it stood in the early 19th century. And all those shaded portions there are additions to Nepal that used to be part of the kingdom in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Now, that's not a very accurate map, but you get the idea. Those shaded portions used to be part of the 1,000-mile-long kingdom of Nepal. And the person who built that kingdom, as you heard earlier, more than anybody else, was this man here, Prithvi Narayan Shah, who was able to lead a process of military conquest from his home state of Gorkha to the west of Kathmandu, and eventually carving the Kathmandu Valley and much else. And in doing that, after 1768, he put it into the Malla dynasty of kings in Kathmandu. And one of their great legacies, the Malla dynasty, which had power in Kathmandu for about 600 years, were the great wood carvings of the Kathmandu Valley. And that's one of the great artistic legacies of Asia, if not the world, those wood carvings. Many of them are still there for us to enjoy today. And the wood carving tradition in the Kathmandu Valley is very much an ongoing tradition. That is the delight and the wonder of anybody who goes there to this day. Prithvi Narayan Shah in his dynasty also gave Nepal its very familiar and unique flag, which you saw a bit of a little bit earlier. This is the only double pennant flag in the world. And the top symbol there is actually originally the symbol of the Shah dynasty of Prithvi Narayan Shah. It doesn't mean that today, but that's the original meaning of that insignia in the upper pennant. Now, this expansion of the Nepali kingdom was all well and good in the late 18th and early 19th century, but it brought Nepal into conflict with the British, and especially the British East India Company. And the reason for that was the East India Company wasn't making much money in the early 19th century. A lot of its trade in Indian cotton fabrics was no longer lucrative because so many fabrics were being turned out by the factories in Manchester and Birmingham. And it was very difficult for Indian cotton fabrics to compete with that under the auspices of the British East India Company. So they needed another way to make money. And the way they thought they were going to make money was off this animal here. That's the Chiru antelope, very common back then in the plateau of Tibet. And the Chiru antelope, the underfur of the antelope, is the source of the famous Shantush wool, one of the most famous and one of the most valuable kinds of wool in the world. And even to this day, if you take 3 of these antelopes and you take the underfur, you can make a nice Shantush shawl, which would be sold for many thousands of dollars. So it's a very lucrative trade item today, and it was in the 19th century. And the British East India Company wanted access to Tibet to be able to get into the trade of Shantush wool. And also what they wanted was the fur of the Shantangi goat, better known as cashmere. And to get that, they needed to get to Tibet. And to do that, they needed to get through the passes, which were controlled by Nepal. And the Nepali kingdom in the early 19th century was not willing to give the British easy access to those passes. And the consequence of that, as you heard a little bit earlier, as a matter of fact, was the Anglo-Nepal War of 1814 to 1816. And that war, by the way, was launched at a time by the British East India Company when Nepal was largely governed by its very famous prime minister, a man named Bhimsen Thapa. And Bhimsen Thapa gave Nepal, among many other things, the famous Bhimsen Tower, which you see here. And I used to look forward to seeing this every day when I lived in Kathmandu. But that was one of the casualties of the terrible 2015 earthquake. The Bhimsen Tower came tumbling down, a terrible loss to the valley and to all of us. Not to mention many people were killed when that tower fell down. It's a terrible thing. But one of his houses still stands, Bhimsen Thapa. This is one of his houses in Kathmandu, and that is the home today of the fabulous National Museum of Nepal. Well, Bhimsen Thapa would not give the British access to the plateau of Tibet, and the consequence was this war. So in the fall of 1814, the British decided to make war on Nepal. And I bring this up, I thought this would be interesting, because at that very same time, in 1814, just as the British were invading Nepal, or trying to, the British were also invading the United States as part of our War of 1812. So one British force made its way down Lake Champlain in 1814, that same year. Another British force was raiding in the Chesapeake Valley, also 1814, the same year. And at the very same time, another force was beginning to enter Louisiana with the purpose of trying to capture New Orleans. So although none of us knew it, Americans nor Nepalis, just for that year, 1814 and into 1815, we were allies against the British Empire. Well, in that struggle, in 1814, America had its Fort McHenry, which held out against the British bombardment and gave rise to our national anthem in the process. We had Fort McHenry in 1814, and in that same year, in 1814, the Nepalis had Nalapani. Now, Nalapani was a fort on Kalanga Hill in what was then the western part of Nepal, now is part of India. And that fort was the first obstacle to the British attempt to invade and to deliver a blow to the Nepali state. The fort at Nalapani was garrisoned by only 400 soldiers under the command of this man here, a very young man named Balbhadra Kunwar. And there were also 200 women and children in the fort. Well, when the British sent him a note, Kunwar, to surrender this fort, he absolutely refused to do it. He tore up the note, asking him to surrender it, and announced that he would defend this fort no matter what. And the British, who outnumbered the garrison at Nalapani by 8-1, attacked the fort from all sides. And they were driven back by soldiers in the fort with musket fire and cannon. And also they were driven back by women in the fort who joined the men and hurled missiles down on the heads of the British attackers, much as you see here in this depiction of the Battle of the Fort at Nalapani. At the height of the struggle, only a few yards from the entrance of the fort, the British commander of the British force was killed by Nepali musket fire. And at this, the British fell back. They then tried to batter the walls of Nalapani down by cannon fire. But even with one of the walls in ruins, the Nepalis continued to hold their ground against assault after assault. Unable to take the fort, the British decided to surround it and cut off the water supply of those who were trying to defend the fort. And once they did that, about the only thing to do was surrender. How can you defend the fort without water? But even then, Kunwar refused to surrender the fort. And with 70 followers, he broke through the British lines, was able to escape to freedom. But the reason I bring this up, this was a heroic resistance at Nalapani, but the reason I bring it up is that what really impressed the British about this resistance at the fort was not just the fighting quality of the Nepali troops and indeed the women in the garrison as well. It was also the kindness and generosity showed by these Nepali defenders. They allowed the British to care for their wounded, did not fire on the British when they tried to take their wounded back for care. They didn't fire on the British when they went to retrieve their dead bodies from the walls of the fort. And most astoundingly of all, the Nepali defenders would actually signal to the British if they were badly wounded and wanted the care of a British surgeon. At one point during the fighting, one of the defenders at Nalapani had a very bad jaw wound, and he stood up on the wall of the fort holding onto his jaw and called to the British, can I come in? Can I come in and get some help from your medical officer? And the British said, sure, invited this man in. They gave him care. They were able to fix up to the extent that they could his jaw. And once the treatment was over, this Nepali soldier said, can I go back and fight? Can I go back to the fort? And the British allowed him to do that. They were so impressed both with his patriotism and with his trust in them. And that characterized the British attitude toward the Nepali defenders throughout the siege. So they took the fort, but what they really remembered was the bravery and the generosity and the kindness of those who were defending the fort. And they were so impressed with it that they put up a monument at Nalapani to the Nepali defenders of the fort. And it's the one on the right that you're looking at right here. They put that up right after the battle. And that is said to be the only time in British military history when they put up a monument to commemorate the courage of their opponents. Now, those of you out in the audience, you might be maybe about to send me a postcard because you might be saying to yourself, no, because there's a statue of George Washington in London. Well, there is a statue of George Washington in London, but that was not erected by the British. That was a gift of the people of Virginia. So this is unique, this monument to the brave defenders under Kunwar at Nalapani. Well, the parallels of our war with the British and the Nepali war against the British go on. And I thought one interesting feature was the man who finally, after several failed efforts, the man who finally was able successfully to invade Nepal was this man here. That's General Ochterlony. And General Ochterlony was actually born right here in Boston in 1758. And he got his army to within 30 miles of Kathmandu. And at that point, Bhimsen Thapa decided it was time to make peace. And that they did. And as we heard before, the consequence of that peace was the surrender of much of the 1,000-mile kingdom that used to be Nepal. Today, it's the size of the state of Arkansas, but it used to be, as we saw earlier, much bigger than that. So Bhimsen Thapa did have to sign this treaty, and there he is. But we should always remember that he was able to maintain, as his successor kings and rulers did, the independence of Nepal at a time when most of India was under British dominion. And for that, no less an authority than Karl Marx praised Bhimsen Thapa as the Asian who most bravely and most persistently stood up to the British in the early 19th century. So with that as my excursion into some shared resonances between Nepali and American history, I'd like to say dhanyavad to all of you. And now I think we can open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Dan. As always, that was wonderful. So I know we're running a little late, but let's take just a few questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat, or you can just come on actually and ask it yourself. Oh, and I just wanted to mention a couple people direct messaged me and asked me for the name of Rabina Lockett's restaurant. So I just would like to say again, it's Himalayan Kitchen, and it's on Bow Street in Union Square, Himalayan Kitchen. Okay. So I'm just going to ask one question for Rukmini, if that's okay. Rukmini, I know that your mother was a big inspiration for you. Would you mind, if you're still here, just talking about how she inspired you?
Of course, like um, my mother, like one day, me and my mother was going to a market, and I was a child, and I just saw like a few women's like they were fetching water from a small pond in our like a country. They have a well, and those women were stopping the other women's like, hey, don't fetch water from here, don't fetch water from here. Then and they were also like not allowing them. And I saw the women's were holding the buckets and standing afar. Then I asked my mom, what is that? Why they are not supposed to get water? And my mom said, just it is the caste system. So in my country they have the caste systems, low caste, lower caste, upper caste. And I was so like a so taken, like, oh my gosh. So since then, like and she was so brave, and like she's going there and saying, hey, why you don't allow these people? You can just bring the water and put in the bucket. So she was trying to do all this kind of social injustice thing in a small community, and I was so inspired. And after having the education in law degree, when then I started doing the sociology and anthropology, and I choose to work in Nepal in the most like a remote place where there was no electricity, and where we were fighting for the girl education. And I still remember like many of the girls left out after the high school because There were no proper toilets like they can go in the middle school. So education was important, and my mother always says that in our time there was not good school, or we were not supposed to go to school. Only boys were allowed to go to school. That is how in a family structures. But my mom never discriminate boys and girls. That is what I saw. And all the time since you asked these questions, when we will walk a long distance, she sings songs, the Nepali folk songs, and I hear that songs. That is why if you look at my Facebook, I always inspire and try to sing the songs that educate, that give you some kind of awareness. So that is why I am so much inspired with the work that she did as a woman, and she fought the social injustice in the community, starting there should be no domestic violence, and there should be no things like that that is against the women. So that is what my answer to your question, Sharon. Is that enough?
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Rukmini. And then Parashu Ram, since you talked about history, and Dan also, there was a question about were the temples of Durbar Square able to be restored after the earthquake?
Yeah, most of the temples and Bhimsen monument is already restored and still working. So uh, in near future might done.
Thank you so much. And Rabina, somebody direct messaged me and asked, what is your favorite thing to cook?
So I love every kind of food. I am a food alcoholic, so I just so especially our specialty is like a set, like Newari Samibaji said, that where I am from, and that's what I love to eat. It's something really different from rest of the food. Most of the food we use are very similar to Indian, but this typical food is that represents me, that represents the Newar community. So I guess that's the one. That's what I grew up eating.
Thank you so much. And Imagine had to leave because she had another meeting, but we had so many comments about the beauty of her work and her use of color and her inspiration. So with that, I just would like to say that the board of president of the museum is here, and she wanted to thank all of you for sharing your experiences with us. I would like to thank Imagine, Rukmini Karki, Parashu Phuyal, Rabina Lockett from Himalayan Kitchen, and Dan Breen for being with us tonight. And most of all, thank you all to our audience for coming and attending this event, Voices from Somerville's Nepali community. A pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for coming and have a great night.